there's a lot of people that don't want the expansion of Frederickson. And I think it's inevitable. So when we talk about, the next Frederickson or the expansion, really Canyon Road to I-5 is probably the next expansion and tilt ups all the way down Canyon Road, where the zoning allows.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really the next step. And then that'll get you that transportation link to directly to the port.
Welcome to our Industrial Advisors podcast. You have Bill Condon and Matt McGregor. We have a great guest today, Mike Avila, who is a principal and designated broker at Pacific Rim Real Estate Group. Mike is a great broker, owner of real estate as well, kind of does it all. And in my opinion, one of the very best land guys in the entire market, if not the best out
No
there.
doubt
And so
about it.
yeah, we've had a lot of success and working with Mike. And so, Mike, it's great to have you on the podcast. Tell us a little bit about what you do for fun before we jump into some of the land and Frederickson questions.
Well, I guess the fun part of the stress relief would be my hobby vineyard. So a lot of people know we have a 2-acre Pinot Noir vineyard out here just south of Frederickson, and grapes weren't supposed to grow, but we make some decent wine. We enjoy it anyway. So besides hiking and working in the vineyard and traveling back and forth to Maui or Europe, that's pretty much what I do besides work.
How many bottles do you guys make a year?
So it's family. It's a total family, friends, hobby vineyard. We don't sell any wine, and we usually have about 600 bottles a year.
Awesome.
Bill's trying to get qualified here, Mike. just so you know.
Yeah. Can I get in on that family friend?
If you,
Yeah.
you come for at least harvest and participate
That's
in
the
harvest.
That's really cool. You mentioned Hawaii, Maui. You just bought something in Maui. Is that right?
Yes, Tina and I have always owned in Maui for a long time now, either long-term lease or ownership. And then it got tired of the condo scene because we're more country type people. And so have an undisclosed location in the upcountry that's just a beautiful setting. So it needs a lot of work. It's another project, but we love it there.
Yeah,
And
that's
it may or
awesome.
may not be close to a vineyard.
Yes.
Now we're talking. Yeah.
Yes, excellent. Well, we loved hearing the story about that, Mike. Thanks for sharing that and your passions, and we can't wait to taste your wine. Maybe tell us just briefly about your career. I think you're best known by brokers as the King of Frederickson and the South End and industrial land, but I've had the pleasure of getting to know you over the last few years and learning a little bit about your past. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your past in commercial real estate and how you got to be the king of the South End on land?
Well, you guys probably know I grew up in Puyallup and I went off into the military. And while I was in the desert, right around the first Gulf War, it was just after Desert Calm when I was over there with a guy, and went back to Herbert Field, Florida. And this guy was a buck sergeant back in the day, which was pretty much non-existent. And I asked him how he had a nice boat, a nice house, and he introduced me to real estate. So he was in the military for the medical and the patriotism. He was an investor. So he took me to the courthouse, and I then just caught the bug and started reading up on everything and totally did a 180 from aviation to real estate. And Tina and I, my poor British wife, we left there. She went from the countryside of England to Fort Walton Beach, Florida, and then Fort Walton Beach, Florida to Tacoma. And we immediately started buying like fourplexes and houses. And I owned a couple laundromats at one time. And in that process, I met a really cool gentleman that ended up being my mentor into the brokerage. And I met Val Kramer, and he was one of the owners of Pacific Rim Real Estate Group at the time. So I met Val in 1993. And by 1996, 97, he was kind of interning me, even though I didn't realize it. And he talked me into getting my broker's license, which I think I finally got in 1998. So Val was a Harvard graduate, Fortune 50 business consultant in his prior life, and he was a very
Wow.
detailed apartment broker. I had friends in the land business, timber business, site contractors, those types of people. And so you guys know I'm usually in boots and jeans and, I come from a construction background and an aviation background, a little bit different spin on the brokerage world. And Val was a old school suit and tie, Cadillac driving guy. But Val introduced me to Frederickson, actually took me to some planning meetings before I even had my broker's license, had me in meetings with James Hardy Company. So Val was
Mhm.
the broker that put the first James Hardy transaction together in Frederickson in 1996.
Wow.
Wow.
And then they had an option to buy the piece next to them, and that was sold to TPU in 2000.
By the
And
way, what else was in Frederickson at the time of the James Hardy deal?
yeah, so if we want to back up to the history of Frederickson,
You don't have to. We can touch on that later, but I was just
okay.
curious, like, it was Boeing there? Boeing was
Yeah,
there.
Boeing was there, Torrey, Medallion Foods. That was kind of it, to be honest, in that
Okay.
1996 timeframe. Boeing was one of the first major businesses into Boeing in 1990.
Mhm.
And that was, some real forward thinking vision by the EDB at the time and the port at the time. So a lot of promises that were made to Boeing never transpired,
Mm.
which I think we'll talk to as far as transportation, the
Yep,
Canton Road link that still isn't there and the Cross Base Highway still isn't there and
that's right.
completed. But anyway, that's what brought James Hardy to Frederickson was a sand resource, a local resource that they need for their siding. They don't get that from Frederickson, but it's
Oh,
close by in Washington.
okay. I
Mm.
So
see.
a mineral source. But Val, like I said, he was my mentor into brokerage. He was my broker as an investor. And then when I started going to the planning meetings back in the mid 90s for Frederickson, you had, the Boeing had a representative there, Torrey had a representative there, James Hardy. So the community planning group looked a lot different than it does today.
Hmm.
It was actually businesses that were showing up and kind of plotting what they wanted to see as far as industry. And in my mind, that's why you see Frederickson the way it is today. It was planned way before that. But as we got into comprehensive planning, just like they're doing right now in Pierce County, the reason it was focused on industrial is because of those folks being at those meetings.
Well, why don't you tell
Phenomenal.
us a little bit about kind of the history of Frederickson? You've seen it, go from the very beginning to where it is. So maybe talk a little bit about the history of it and how you've seen it get developed.
Yeah. So knowing that back in the mid 90s and the industrial, what the vision was for industrial, it was, as you guys know, 20,000, 30,000 square foot manufacturers, small manufacturers with log yards, gravel pits, different from what it is today. When it started changing and going to maybe 100,000 square foot user, we, as a broker, I was a little bit ignorant about that, logistics and warehousing. It was kind of a new thing, I guess, even 5 years ago, as far as getting a 1,000,000 square foot building or 500,000 square foot building. So that was never the mindset in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was more, we're going to have, sawmills, machine shops, plumbers, steel fabrication places, which you still have there today. You still have, Sound Heating, Alliance Steel, I'm trying to think, Mitsui, and Torrey. So you have this manufacturing component in Frederickson, Niagara. However, it's been overcome now by the logistics. And so I always was a fan, not only of the industrial side, but the housing side that surrounded Frederickson.
Mhm.
And we understood because of Boeing too. So I used to work at Boeing at night back in the late 90s, for about 5 years while I did this during the day. And we understood that Frederickson had the skilled labor pool. In that area, if you look at Frederickson as an island, as you pull out and go south into Pierce County, east, west, there's this huge labor pool. So while all this was going on, as far back as 2000, we were working with Bethel School District, Tom Siegel, and he just retired, I think last week, to put that skills center together, the Pierce County Skills Center. And the people that were the pioneers of that did an awesome job. And I think that skills center and the skilled labor pool helped lead us to where we're at today. And I don't know if you've been through it. If you guys haven't, we should take a tour through there. It like
We
when
should definitely
Amazon
take a
came
tour.
in,
Yeah.
we sent the Amazon folks and their brokers there to tour with Tom and Michelle Ledbetter and see what's going on. And it kind of brought them to Frederickson because skilled labor is always that issue. Do we have enough labor force? Right.
Yeah, I mean, labor's always the big one, and you've seen, Frederickson's been probably the hottest submarket we've had, right, from a corporate tenant standpoint here over the last few years. Why else? Labor is a big one, but what other factors are driving those corporate users to Frederickson?
Transportation, labor, cost of dirt. So labor cost is a big issue. Land costs are a big issue. There was EDB they still do a great job, but they did a great job of incentives. So for a while, if you're a manufacturer, there was no traffic fees compared to Auburn, Kent that just had huge traffic impact fees. The transportation, people would balk at it. However, when we talk about the drayage rates, and I think we were going to get there,
Hmm.
Frederickson is kind of on par with, it's cheaper than DuPont and Lacey usually,
Hmm.
and cheaper than Kent or on par with Kent, a little bit more than Sumner. So
Okay.
unless you're really down in you say the core market, you say like right next to the port, Fife, Sumner, Frederickson's very competitive on drayage rates and time back and forth to the port. But that's the logistics side. The manufacturing side, I think, was cost. So low land cost, entry cost, no traffic impact fees, and a great skilled labor workforce.
Let's expand on the traffic a little bit in two different components of it. One, we're about to drop and finish dropping several million feet of product that will obviously have tons of truck activity, mainly up and down Canyon, right? So, talk to us a little bit about the future of not only the impact of all these warehouses that will be open, say, in the next 12 months, but then the two corridors that you discussed earlier with the expansion and connection of the canyon and then the cross basin highway.
So one thing they've done just micro internal to Frederickson is try and grid some roads. And you guys have seen that with 196 connecting Canyon and 38. Canyon being extended south to 108th now. Eventually it might go to 224th. So when you look at the projects, and Matt, you were instrumental in bringing Best Buy into that project first. Best Buy, Ashley, Boeing, all these people that went back to that Frederickson One project will actually be able to just go down 208th now. And they could either go out to Canyon Road or they could go out to Pacific. And then when you look at Fred 310, there's a loop road that's supposed to be built over time and it's partially built that actually would loop you across 176 down to 172nd and Canyon
Mhm.
and pop out where Palace's Canyon Point property is. And so
Right.
those properties have little loop roads, and the Boeing project is part of that right now. That's the micro side where you can get around and not get bottlenecked, say at 176 in Canyon. That's going to be the main bottleneck. So they have things internal they've worked on that I think are going to work out well. But then you're right. Now we have to get from there to the port or there to
Mhm.
I-5. And it's not bad now. However, I have a strong opinion that Canyon Road and that Public Works has been pushing the pace. Right now, you can get to Pioneer pretty quick.
Mhm.
And from there, it needs to be extended all the way to I-5, the 70th Street, which they had in the works and the council shot down last year. The executive had grant money from the federal government for the bridge going over the Burlington Northern tracks. And the council overruled that, which was unfortunate because public
Why?
backs it.
Sorry, why did they overrule it? What was their
You
position?
know, I don't know. It seemed more political than anything else. There's no reason not to. There's a lot of people that don't want the expansion of Frederickson. And I think it's inevitable. So when we talk about, the next Frederickson or the expansion, really Canyon Road to I-5 is probably the next expansion and tilt ups all the way down Canyon Road, where the zoning allows.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really the next step. And then that'll get you that transportation link to directly to the port.
And when do you optimistically think that would be completed?
Well,
Mhm.
we need anybody listening to call Pierce County council members
You hear that,
and
everybody?
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
We'll actually put the number in the footnotes of the podcast, so in case anybody wants to contact them.
perfect. And there's an Pierce County executive race going on right now for November. And I just tell people, read up on the two candidates. And if you're pro transportation and logistics, then figure out which one works for you. I think no matter whatever side gets in, I think us as brokers and businesses need to at least educate them on why we need this. And so going back to when it'll happen, I guess it depends on the political side,
Optimistically, yeah. Yeah.
but maybe 2030. I mean, it is
Okay.
happening. It's just never as fast as we like.
Yeah. So, just out of curiosity, because nobody would know these corridors better than you. When Bill and I first started placing tenants, Best Buy and the like, and some recent tenants as well into Frederickson, I mean, every time I hit that corridor, there were no issues. Right now, obviously, Fred 10 coming on and several other projects that are underway will have tenants in the future, and let's just add say 4 million feet over the next couple of years of heavy truck tenants. I did notice on my last drive about a week ago to Frederickson, the biggest backup I've seen departing as you climb north on Canyon toward I-5. It was the biggest backup I've seen, and we still have several million feet to go. What do you think that looks like in a year?
Well, hopefully, a lot of the warehousing and logistics will happen at night or off peak
Yep,
hours. So I don't know
that's
what
right.
time you're in Frederickson, Matt, but I've had that happen. Like the train comes past to Boeing and clogs up the road, or
Clogs it up. Yep.
yeah, I know all the professionals in the transportation business have modeled it and said we're fine, and what they're doing is
Great.
trying to take care of the internal stuff to get everyone on Canyon moving. So depending on where you're at, what time of day it was, I think we're fine for what's being built. It just depends. As you know, a lot of these companies have room to grow. And so I think their growth is going to depend on getting to the port. You're right. And so when you talk about what's next for Frederickson and its expansion, even just space that's built that's being underutilized by companies is going to be the next uptick in growth, right?
That's
And it
right.
is traffic's gonna play a role. So, but right now as we speak, Canyon Road's being punched south, as I said, to
Hmm.
208th.
Yep.
That's a big deal. And truck traffic, when we have that grid, it can get out to Pacific Avenue as well. It doesn't have to go north to Canyon if it's heading to Portland or somewhere.
Right. And what about your prediction on the Cross Basin Highway completion date?
You know, I was told that would have happened by now. My whole since 1994 or 5 when I was doing the growth management with these guys. The
Bill
word was
promised me
on
167 would have been completed 10 years ago, and
yes. So, I don't have any faith in it. I don't think Boeing does, and I
okay.
think that's one reason they went ahead and sold and pared down, and I just feel it's very unfortunate that Pierce County and the state of Washington didn't step up and produce that, and I think they need to. So I don't think any of us can predict when it's gonna happen. I think you need some political will and will of a bunch of people to push it.
That's right.
We've seen such a, tremendous amount of growth the last 5 years or so, 10 years, call it, in Frederickson. What do you think the next kind of 5 years look like for Frederickson?
I think the growth, like I said, is going to be in existing building expansion, infill sites. Like you guys know, everybody looks at Randall's yard right now. There's a couple pieces that can be purchased to go vertical on. And then you've got the Canyon Road corridor. I don't see any short term in the next 3 to 5 year rezoning of property to expand the footprint of Frederickson. I think that's going to take more time. And I think the old school, the people that have retired from the port over the last few years, they were focusing on some things to the south and the southwest and kind of the next Frederickson. I don't know if that will happen in 5 or 10 years. So I think Frederickson's very limited, which is going to push pricing and rents up as for all the things we
Sure.
just talked about. The same bottlenecks are happening on 167, as you guys know. So the
Of course.
drayage rates then go up for anyone in that core, that valley. I think personally things might head, west and south,
Hmm.
and it's just going to take time.
going to
more
have to. Yeah,
regional distribution.
Yeah.
that's right.
Well, very insightful. Obviously, nobody knows the history of that market, the details of that market better than you. So, Mike, thanks for sharing the Frederickson knowledge with us and the listeners today. You've been fantastic, and we'll look forward to seeing like the next 5 years, 10 years, what Frederickson looks like here in the future as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys, and thanks for the introduction. And I look forward to putting some deals together with you in the future.
Sounds great,
Always,
Mike.
man. Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
All right, take care.